What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Hive Prometheus. It has been a few months here. I was looking at my upload schedule here, and it's been about 3 months since my last upload. And a lot has happened in the time since then, so I thought I would go through quite a few topics today. I'm going to kind of just spitball a bunch of things, starting chronologically. Starting in mid-March, I had a GT. I was trying to break my 3-3 record that I had gone pretty much at all other events previously, both in October at a Denver Fight Club GT and at a GT in January for Denver Fight Club. And in between those, I did a team tournament with one of the local teams here, the Bellacore Bells, in December. I ended up doing a lot better in that, but I wanted to see if I could kind of express more of an individual skill in the GT here in March. That was Rocky Mountain Open. I did end up going 4-2, so I finally broke my 3-3 curse. The scores of which I had World Eaters first round. I'm pretty comfortable with World Eaters, but we were on layout 1, and we were in our corner deployments. I was playing more of a Monster Mash Invasion Fleet list, which I've become pretty comfortable with just because of playing Crusher for so long. I went 99-49 against that first opponent. I then, again, in round 2, matched against World Leaders again. He had a Lord Corn of Skulls and some Greater Demons that were a bit harder for me to chew through. I just couldn't get through a couple of the invulns on his Lord Invocatus, which was weird because I blew up the Lord of Skulls on the first turn between Exocrine and Tyranid fire. So I ended up losing that by 4. It was 85-89, really close. Didn't feel too bad about that. The guy was really funny. Third round, I matched against a guy that I've played several times, both with Demons and Votann. I played his Votann in the team tournament and Demons in my October GT that I lost by 4. This one, I kind of went in thinking, Tyranids against Demons, if we use our army rule to try to battle shock anything, it ends up just healing them. So I kind of went into this game thinking it was just a loss. And I played the game out. I did end up shadowing on turn 4 or 5, and I got a lucky Shadow the Warp on a unit that specifically was the only thing holding a primary objective for him. So he lost 5 points on that. I think I battle shocked some of his corn dogs or something off on a side objective, and I did end up winning that game 65-60, which I think was a little bit lucky. Otherwise, I think it would have been a draw, or I would have lost by 5 just because of that 5-point primary flip. Round 4, I matched into Greater Demons, Plague Demons, Plague Legion specifically. I've played against them one other time and I lost by 3. It was 78-81 in a TTS game. Plague Demons in general, I know I can't chew through super efficiently. I kind of have to be pretty careful on how I trade with my units. Another really close game, I lost 85-92, which I think would be a 9-11 loss in WTC scoring for teams. So again, not too bad. It's definitely one of my harder matchups. So at this point, I'm 2-2. In order to go 4-2, I've got to win my next 2 games. So I'm kind of praying that my round 5 is going to be something a little bit nicer. I did match in Hypercrypt Necrons. I hadn't played Necrons in quite a long time, and I hadn't played the updated Necrons. Where now I don't think they can rapid ingress 6 inches, but they can deep strike 6 inches instead of their 3-inch deep strike that they used to have. I think the guy was just a little bit newer. He hasn't played 100 plus games like I have. He said he'd played about 15 or 20, and Necrons was his secondary army. Still a good player, but I think he just had too few units to kind of trade with me, because I'm just kind of used to that. And I ended up scoring a lot better on my secondaries just because I was threatening anything of his that wasn't going to shoot on his turn. So I ended up winning that 96-56. I gave him some good advice going into round 6 on how he could kind of pilot things better. And then round 6, I matched into the same Knights opponent that I played in my October GT, Ben Swanson. Really good Imperial Knights player. Really fun guy. Whenever we play, we always think of Pacific Rim. And it's serendipitous I'm wearing that shirt today. So we've got Otachi over here, and we've got Gypsy Danger. So Tyranids versus Knights. I had a better list this time. I was not playing Crusher Stampede, and we were playing on a more open map. So I knew I had better firing lines. I just had to be, again, careful on my trades. I did end up getting turn 2, so he was forced to come out and get onto primer early, which gave me an advantage because I could start plinking things earlier. There were a couple of misplays, but between just the number of lethals that I was getting with Invasion Fleet just to kind of give extra damage boosts on Exocrines and Tyranid I did significantly more damage this time than I did with Crusher Stampede. So on more open maps, I think that Invasion Fleet just ends up doing better. On WTC maps or denser maps, I think Crusher, just having one monster that can go through walls at least once a turn. It's just great utility. And then also with Storm Guided Missiles, being able to ignore cover and ignore any penalties to hit, I think ends up being the sweet spot. So I think Crusher Stampede is still kind of tied for like second or third best attachment. Evasion is still the best. So that's why I pivoted to that in the GT here in March, because I definitely wanted to go 4-2. I ended up winning that 78 to 55, so clinching the last two matches of my day, I did go 4-2. That also kind of helped formalize sort of the idea of what we wanted to play for our team tournament. I'm probably going to be the one playing the Monster Mash style Tyranids. Matt's probably going to be switching to Knights. And now Nick has some new toys with the new Deathguard Codex that has just come out. Before I move on to talking about Deathguard, the Rocky Mountain Open weekend, March 22nd, was the first weekend that Mordaka was legal for orcs to play in competitive play. I think both the largest GTs that weekend, one was in England, I can't remember the name of it, and Rocky Mountain Open here in Colorado. All three top spots were Mordaka lists. So the giving sustain 2 to things that normally hit on 5s or 6s ends up doubling or tripling their output. So anything like Ludas or orcs that have the rocket launchers, can't remember the names, Tank Bustas, their damage output ends up becoming much, much higher when they can't just hit on 5s or 6s. Who would have thought? In the time since the Rocky Mountain Open and now, Mordaka has been changed so that I think it's sustained 1. They've specifically made it so that only certain units can be targeted with the stratagem for the put into WA strat. Which I think is good. It at least made it so that the special character that can attach to Grots can't just wah and scout and then advance and move 21 inches to basically lock you into your deployment on the first turn. It at least allows you to move units out of your deployment and play the game, which I think is good. Just kind of touching on the ongoing meta for 40k in general. Emperor's Children have come out. They actually are performing very well. I think they have something like a 58 or 60% win rate, depending on the weekend, for the tournaments that have had them play in so far. So I think probably just the ability to have such high AP, sustained hits, reactive charges after you finish a move, and they have some pretty good combined shooting and melee. Ends up being pretty good. I think one of our only counters against that is kind of just high toughness and minus to hit. So Maleceptors, anything with T10 plus, Norns end up being pretty good against them. You just don't want them to be swamped by things with fights first or with a combination of shooting and melee. They can kind of win if they're only dealing with one phase of the game at a time. Other than that, Tyranid, surprisingly, we didn't get very much help in the MFM back in March, right before Rocky Mountain Open, which kind of disheartened me. You know, Neurolictors came down 10, a couple things came down a few points. Exocrines went up to 140, Tyranifexes went up to 200. I really think that was kind of needless. We had been hovering at about a 48% win rate anyway, but I think maybe GW saw that a lot of the Marine variant codexes like Emperor's Children, Deathguard, Thousand Suns, things that we normally have some pretty good shooting against anyway. Exocrines are AP 3 damage 3, Maleceptors AP 2 damage 3. They probably saw that as we would be a good counter because I think Tyranids are good against Marines in general, at least trading. So I think that was probably the conventional wisdom. I was really kind of unhappy and disheartened originally at that. And I haven't been playing as much 40k in, I guess, in perpetuity like I had been previously before that MFM. You know, I was playing 3 or 4 games a week sometimes, getting ready for tournaments and things like that. But now I've kind of I pumped the brakes. I'm playing maybe a game every 2 weeks. I'm kind of just keeping up with things. But life has gotten in the way. I've rededicated some of my energy towards the gym. I recently hit a 300-pound bench on my birthday, which was on Friday the 2nd of May, which I'm very happy about. So there's some stuff I'm working on outside of just 40K. Taking care of mind, body, and spirit, not just on the tabletop. But now finally going into talking about Deathguard and some of the other Marine codexes that are coming out. Deathguard look great. I mean, having Demon Princes, they're T11 or T12, depending if you have the walking or flying variant. They can get 3-inch loan op as long as they're behind. It's either a battle line or another infantry unit. That's incredible. Why don't Tyranids have that rule for Hive Tyrants? Their Demon Princes are also cheaper than a Hive Tyrant, and they're T11 or T12. I mean, I feel like Hive Tyrants need an extra toughness. Norns should always have been T12. I'm hoping in June or July when we get a little bit of our update, we get a rules refresh and maybe some points adjusted up so we're slightly more elite. It just feels strange that we've kind of just been in this 9-month MFM hell where everything kind of feels the same, but things might shift 5 or 10 points. Like a lot of my lists went up to 5 or 10 points just because of the Exocrines and Tyranifex changes. So, plus 15 points because of bringing 3 exocrines, and plus 10 or plus 20 because I was bringing 2 Tyranid and Crusher. It made Crusher worse. So now you're better playing Invasion Fleet anyway. It sucked the wind out of being able to play other detachments other than Invasion. Neurolictors also want to be probably that third lictor in a list. You'd probably want those 2 normal lictors, and then your third lictor you can upgrade for a couple points, 20 points to a neurolictor. But so we've got Deathguard. I think they're going to be kind of the hard army to contest right now. I think a lot of their weaknesses still rely on they're still slow, but their damage output has gone up. They have a lot more access to rerolls. They have a lot better access to subtracting toughness at saves. They now have an aura around Morty to fight on death on 2+, I think. So he already was a little bit of a force multiplier, but he kind of was more of a debuff. Now he's kind of like Magnus. I think he's a little bit of a linchpin of the army if you do bring him. I haven't seen every list bring him. But I think when you do, you really want to kind of castle up and move up, kind of like you would with Calgar in Ultramarines or with Reboot Gilman. So he's he's 300+ points. I don't know how much he costs. Just a force org multiplier. Thousand Sons and Knights. I know the Knight Defender was revealed. I haven't really looked at his profile. I assume that he probably has some defensive capabilities that are different than other knights, given the word defender, but I'd have to look into that. Haven't kept up with that because I don't play knights. Not super interested in it. But I know the Thousand Sons Codex is coming out. Thousand Sons, as far as I've seen, have had not a good run. Their win rate percentage is about 43.5, 44% on any given weekend right now. And I think that's just because they're a super elite army that can't really contest with the changes with Emperor's Children and with Deathguard. I think they kind of just counter that. There isn't enough damage output that they can do to completely nuke, a third or quarter of the army that they need to do sometimes to swing the game back in their direction. So on top of all those codexes coming out, this is looking to be the summer of chaos that people were saying it was going to be with Emperor's Children, Deathguard, and Thousand Sons. Rolling into June or July, I am preparing for a team tournament with the Trolls coming up in late May. That'll be on the last weekend of May, I think on the 30th and 31st. Looking forward to that. I did perform pretty well at my first team tournament in December, not really knowing the format very well. But my first, out of those 4 games, I got a 9 against Tyranids. It was a mirror match, Crusher Stampede. I got a 8 against Imperial Guard, Astra Militarum, which was a tough match. I made some unforced errors, and I probably could have gotten a 9 out of that, but the 8 was fine, just because that was a pretty tough matchup for everybody else. I got a 10 against Bully Boys Orcs, and I did not prepare that list for Bully Boys, and I got a lucky 13 against Votan. So averaged out, I hit my matrix goal, which was to hit a 9 or 10 on pretty much every match. And I think if I can do that and I can kind of prevent other armies from getting 4s, 5s, or 6s, then that essentially is like a shadow extra 4 points that I've given my team. And that could be the difference between a win or a loss. So that is the goal there. Going into June and July, I am excited for a shakeup in the meta. I feel like I've played enough games now that unless a game is going to be kind of a challenge, more so outside the realms of the armies I've played. So I need to probably get out there and I need to play more Emperor's Children, Deathguard, probably Chukari. There's a couple armies that I just have little experience playing into, and I need to short my blind spots just so that when I go into the team tournament, I have a better, more well-rounded idea of the armies that I can go into and perform well. Then that is my goal. I'm really hoping that we get a little bit of a glow up like we saw Deathguard just get. There's a lot of things here where they synergize so well. And they're not over the top, but I think it's over the top in the aspect that 10th edition was supposed to be a less lethal edition, and now we're starting to see the power creepiness of it. Now, we are 2 years into the edition, and I think we've probably pushed off the power creep better than we did in 9th edition. We probably push it off another year. But if this is the precedent we're going to set for new codexes, I really feel like there's some armies that need to be brought up to the same standard. It's kind of crazy that Blight drones, with all the buffs that they're able to get, are 100 points, and they essentially have the same output as a Maleceptor. They're strength 10, AP2 for 3, and then for CP they can reroll the number of shots on all of the drones. That's crazy. So for 40% less points, we have exocrine style shooting. So Yeah, I mean, like, Tyranid participation in tournaments has dropped from, I think, about 7% to 5%, sometimes 4.5%, depending on the weekend, which means essentially faction specialists are the only ones taking Tyranids to tournaments, which I think is the only reason we're seeing a 50.4% win rate in the first place. So congratulations to people who are pulling Tyranids out of the dirt and making them perform well. That's awesome. Originally, I would go to StatCheck to try to look and see what the faction win rates are, but the StatCheck website has not been updated since the 28th of March, which is the weekend after Rocky Mountain happened. So for the time being, I have been using Warp Friends and Den of Fools on YouTube, two channels who track the win rates of tournaments and tournament wins. So if you are interested, go ahead and go give those guys a subscribe. They are super useful. They try to update weekly or bi-weekly on the win rates. So that's where I'm drawing the information on the win rates for Thousand Suns, Tyranids, Deathguard, etc. As it is right now, if I were to make another tier list, I don't think things have really shifted enough to justify doing another whole video. I think that's probably going to have to come in a couple months once new points and no new rules hit the meta. We still just have quite a few units that are just non-existent in the meta. There are too many points, they don't do enough damage, there's no synergy with it, there's not enough AP on our side. Almost all of our quality melee is AP2. It just feels like we're hampered like 1 point on everything. Norn should be T12, their Melta should be AP4, their melee on the Big Claw should be AP3, Tyrant should be T11. Like, there's some things that I think that Tyranids have just kind of fallen away, and we've barely kind of kept up just based off the skill of the base of players who play Tyranids in the first place. Well, let's hope that my upload schedule can be a little better than just once every 3 months. I'm not trying to turn into the new JonTron where he only uploads once or twice a year here. But things have been a little weird lately. Take care of yourself, drink water, get some sunshine. Make sure you're providing for yourself in mind, body, and spirit outside of the game. This game's supposed to be enjoyable, and part of the reason I've pulled back a little bit is just because the game can be stressful for me, and if I've got other external stressors in life, I can't necessarily deal with it as well. So I'm warming back up to the idea of getting some more games in and preparing for the team tournament coming up in May, and I think that's the goal of it, just to go out, have some fun, play with teammates, and just see how we can perform. So I'll try to keep my ear closer to the ground on any new updates on the game, and if there's something unprecedented or interesting, I will try to upload and comment on it. But otherwise, I will catch you all around. Thanks for coming by. Thanks for coming by, and I'll catch you next time on Hive Prometheus.